to actually the first event of the DDD, Digital Delights and Disturbances lecture series of this semester, spring 2026. And as you know, the Digital Delights and Disturbances lecture series is organized by the Communication and Media Studies Department here at Cabot. My name is Valentina Tanni. I am a lecturer here, and today it's my honor to introduce our guest, Auriea Harvey. And so just a few words before I leave the floor to Auriea. Auriea, she's an American artist, but she's based in Rome. And her work combines, as you will see, the digital and the physical dimensions in so many different and interesting ways. So she creates sculptures, both in the physical space and in mixed reality, so on different, like bridging different realities. And in the past, she has been working like at the intersection of art and technology for many decades, 3 decades, something like that, yeah? This sentence, right, the intersection of art and technology, it's like, how many times did you? Okay, so it's a very classical way of defining what artists do with technology. But anyway, so she has been a pioneer of net art in the early days of the internet, of the World Wide Web, specifically in the 90s. She also co-founded the studio Tale of Tales, together with Michael Samyn. Did I pronounce it right? Michael, I'm sorry. Samyn, and they, the studio created experimental interactive experiences. Someone would say video games, but artist video games, like trying to experiment with the idea. Yeah, we'll get into it. But experiment with the idea of like exploring interaction as a language, like exploring digital spaces. And her work has been exhibited all around the world in a lot of very prestigious venues and institutions. For example, the Tangali Museum in Basel, the Victorian Albert Museum in London, New Museum in New York, and many more. And also her work has been collected by a lot of very relevant museums, for example, the Whitney Museum of American Art. And I'm really happy to have Auriea with us today, because I've been following her work for many years now, like since the late 90s. Yeah, let's not count the years, many years, because I actually came across her work when I was studying at the university. I graduated with a thesis on net art, so it was like I was interested in the work that you were doing back then. So today's talk is titled The Sacred Screen, as you can see, and in the talk, Auriea will talk about art history, philosophy, but also about her personal practice and personal experiences through the years. And I think the topic will be the power of images, right, and how they work on us in different ways. So without further ado, I leave the floor to Auriea Harvey.
Are some of you making media art, or is it mostly reading or thinking about media art? Who's an artist? Any artists here? No artists here?
What?
Yeah, come on. You can, come on. Okay, perfect. So this is for you. No. So that's good to know, because this talk is a little bit of a lot of things. First of all, I'm 54 years old, and I want to talk to you about, first, I guess, what is a life lived with tech is, I guess. But sometimes it could feel like indecision, like I never really chose this life or something. It just kind of fell on me. Because what gets destroyed and what stays, and what have I done? The first job I ever had was at a framing store, so framing other people's art. I was 16 years old. Doesn't really count, but let's tell you. Then I lucked into being a set designer in a children's museum in the town where I'm from. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, originally. Then I moved to New York City, and I became a sculpture student. Not really a profession, but you know, since I'm giving you my complete resume, let's start there. I was at Parsons School of Design, and in 1990, they had started their very first computer lab there. And I got a job there because it was the highest paying work-study job you could get. And I learned all about computers, being a university computer lab IT girl. On the sly, I got a job in a copy store because I needed to print things out for free. After I graduated at age 22, I became a computer tutor, but I was fired and devastated. Laid on a couch for 2 weeks crying because I couldn't believe I got fired. Then I bounced back and started lying about what I could do. Started lying about my abilities, got a job at publishing houses as a junior designer, although I had not studied design at all. I just pretended I did, and also I knew about computers, so I was able to work for the then sort of aging or ending habits of the way publishing worked, where everything was done by hand on paper, and you know all this, and I knew the new ways, and I could sort of teach the older art directors these new ways and stuff. So I was pretty useful in New York City, which led to me getting ahead of myself and working in advertising hell slave ships, meaning that I just kind of worked night shifts in huge ad agencies, like retouching giant billboards in Photoshop and stuff like that, but you were just very disposable. Then came the light at the end of the tunnel, independent HTML, net.art heaven, meaning that when the web came along, I was able to finally just work for myself, which led to cyberspace, which led to video games, which led to me being an art school games professor, and now what I do now, being a digital sculptor, and who knows what I'm going to be doing in the future. This video, by the way, is from 1999, and it's a compilation of webcam footage. I used to just sit there at my desk with my webcam on me, projecting my image onto the web. So I would say that this line marks the difference between the old and the new for me. And that point right there is when I moved here to Rome, 6 years ago. So this presentation is going to contain far too much information, but I feel like I need to define some terms here and there, and maybe there's a chance that later sections make some related sense to the overall theme that I'm talking about, which is like image wars and things like this. I'm talking, first of all, caveats, I'm talking about my personal experience as a practitioner with art and tech, someone who's done a lot of different things. I'm just into talk. You kind of have to do a lot of different things if you're into tech as an artist. Also, I'm not a theory person, so beware my flawed thinking, but I'm just an artist who's seen some things. I want to talk about a trajectory of disappointment and responsibility too, I guess. Confessions from the advent of the web to AI. Okay, let's go. So, if this plays, there we go. This, and I hope you can see it. It's very grainy and dark, but if I trace back the first time a technological hype cycle let me down, it was VR. In the late 1990s, this was the way that looked. This is a video of me immersed in VR for the first time. It was a project called Ephemer by Canadian artist Char Davies. She's awesome, you have to look her up. But when I was making this presentation, I realized that this is the only video I have of myself from the 90s. Others were made, but I probably took more videos of myself yesterday than all of those combined. And anyway, those old VHS or mini DV tapes, they no longer exist. Maybe one day something is found of them, but somehow this little clip survived, translations of formats and vagaries of codecs. Of course, only I know it's me. You just have to trust me. I asked myself, why did this thing survive? It must have been important for me to keep it. Indeed, I've used it in many, many presentations like this. I kind of use it all the time. What killed VR the first time? I actually don't know. I was just starting out down a road through tech and art, but VR was very much popular, part of the popular culture in the 90s. And all I knew was that one day it disappeared. It became completely inaccessible, not that it was all that accessible anyway. You kind of had to be in academia to be involved. But it all made me very sad because all I wanted to do in my early 20s was run away and work on VR. As an aside, if you want to know about these kinds of lost futures, how the web was supposed to be entirely VR, actually, and the various dreams that those in those first wave of VR had, I suggest the book Dawn of the New Everything, The Journey Through Virtual Reality by Jaron Lanier. And if you want to know more about the interactive world we could have had, full of a far more interesting interactive design than we have now, I suggest browsing The Art of Human-Computer Interface Design by the brilliant Brenda Laurel. It's on archive if you want to take a look through it. Fast forward to when VR came back, 2017 or thereabouts. So time passed, all of a sudden VR is a thing again. In 2017, I came to Rome as a resident at the Accademia Belgica, the Belgian Academy. My partner and I, had received the Belgian equivalent of the Rome Prize in order to do research for our ongoing VR project called The Cathedral in the Clouds. I was sick to death of game development at that time, but it had formed me after 13 years of doing it. So making VR was like going back in time for me. Though many at the time were calling it the future, I had opinions. I had always related interactions in virtual environments to architecture rather than to cinema, and storytelling in virtual interactive environments as more akin to being inside a cathedral where the story is all around you if you take the time to learn what it's telling you and how to interpret it. During the 5 months of residency in Rome, my focus was to look into relics as virtual objects because I had a theory. Relics were the first virtual objects because they may or may not be real, but the reality of them doesn't matter. Only belief in them does. Every relic is true in its own way because of that belief. In spite of seeing the ridiculousness of Facebook buying Oculus and switching their name to Meta and everything about the metaverse, knowing that that was an illusion, I was kind of into it. It had elements of appeal because of that unreality. VR stood out for me as a way to see beyond the screen, and world building had an allure of reality. In VR, you're no longer beholden to your imagination. You don't even need your imagination to use VR. Your body is actually tricked into believing in spatial relationships and sensations. Another example that I found during that time was the Scala Sancta, the Holy Staircase brought to Rome in legend by Saint Helena, the mother of Constantine, Emperor of Rome. But the staircase supposedly led to the palace of Pontius Pilate, where Jesus ascended to meet his fate, something like this, yes. There are 28 stairs. You're supposed to climb on your knees and say a prayer for each step. I was studying what it meant to use relics at that time, so I observed. It was ethnographic research. So, in a fit of abandon, up I went, up the Scala Sancta on my knees too. It hurt, just telling you, if you've never done it. It was a great example of this virtuality that I was looking for, because I knew that even in Rome, there's a copy of the steps that is considered no less holy. And there are copies in other places, or at least copies of the concept. And in this world, its meaning is completely portable. The belief is in what they are, not in just what they represent. So it doesn't matter that it's the authentic thing. It's still the authentic thing, even when it's not. It's great. Difficult for the non-believer to wrap their head around. But what I did know, what I was trying to say is, what did I know? Because at the time, I actually believed in nothing. I understood nothing but objects and their effects. I kind of just really was looking at this as a very objective thing, as if you could do that. But the idea of replication of something holy and real appealed to me anyway. Digital artists work in replication. much like many artists have in the past. My favorite being Auguste Rodin, with his reckless borrowing and assemblage of the past. He was the first truly modern sculptor. His studio was a workshop and a lab for the human form. This is like at the end of the 1800s. He had this collection of ancient artifacts, and he was kind of always dissecting the past to give birth to the future. It sounds very tech in a way. He would glue his plaster forms to what would most would consider precious antique fragments without even blinking. He would just take something from ancient Egypt and like stick his thing on it, and I appreciate that. So with that, we have to talk about iconoclasm, and iconoclasm is not a word that I want to take too lightly. Most of us respecting the norms would never destroy something ancient, but is Rodin destroying these vessels or not? I mean, today, of course, we say he wasn't, right? Because each of these is worth, like, who knows how much, But at the time, it makes me think of something that French philosopher, Bruno Latour, he would say that we would have to know his intentions. Latour coined the term iconoclash for the in-between state of not knowing whether a work of art is created or destroyed by actions upon it. I feel that when it comes to digital media today, this term could be one of the most important that there is, iconoclash. What happens when there is uncertainty, I'm quoting him now, what happens when there is uncertainty about the exact role of the hand at work in the production of a mediator? Iconoclasm is when we know what is happening in the art of breaking and what the motivations are. It's a clear project of destruction or construction. Iconoclash is when one does not know, one hesitates, one is troubled by an action for which there is no way to know. Without further inquiry, there is whether something is destructive or constructive. In his essay from this show that was at ZKM in 2002, his essay is What is Iconoclash? He opens with the example of the firemen in Turin trying to smash the glass to save the Shroud of Turin from a fire. But from the photograph, you can't tell if they're destroying it or saving it. Are they vandals or heroes? You can't tell without context. The key question of iconoclash is the hand of work wielding the hammer to expose, debunk, or destroy, or is it cautious hand trying to catch, welcome, generate, and maintain truth and sanctity? It's the ambiguity, the hesitation, the inability to immediately know whether image breaking is liberation or vandalism, prophecy or provocation. So there's an element to all of the tech hype cycles that I've endured that feels familiar to me in religious belief even. There's a good side to what some others would call self-deception, to indoctrination. To use the early internet as an example, where you just had to have been there to understand. Maybe you could see it, but you couldn't see what the net was going to be. You had to jump into it. On the early web, we didn't use our names. We were avatars, but not the flat kind of stamp-sized images that you see now as an avatar. We were whole minds. There were whole minds of other people that the World Wide Web helped you to know. Before the web, you could not ever get to know someone in another country unless you could go there. And people didn't physically travel so much then as they do now. But I have often thought, since those heady, beautiful days of the early web, did we create a world or destroy one by being such enthusiastic adopters of internet technology? Surely it was out of my hands. I didn't ask for the browser wars, which was, maybe I should back up and explain, like Netscape and Internet Explorer, they called this the browser wars when you had to choose, because if you coded your website in a certain way, it could only be visited in Internet Explorer, and if you coded it in another way, it could only be seen in Netscape, and you must choose. And it was like this big problem that was actually an economic war between two large corporations, but we had to take it on personally. I've often felt like, even though I didn't ask for all this, to this day, I feel a little bit responsible for whatever is going on with the internet. It's really funny. After all, I was one of the first to believe in it all. So for me to continue with this discussion, there's one more important thing you gotta know about me, and that is this. Who knows, maybe all that study of relics and time spent in cathedrals got to me. As a friend said to me, oh, they got you with their Catholic bling, and I was like, they kind of had me since birth. But in 2022, after moving to Rome for 2 years and being here through the pandemic, I experienced a great conversion. And in 2023, I was baptized as a Catholic by Pope Francis in St. Peter's. And before you ask, I don't know why I was chosen for that honor, and I don't know why it just happened. Indeed, you have to stay open to wonder. I chose as my baptismal saint name Veronica, because Auriea, there is no Saint Auriea, so I needed a name, and I chose Veronica. I like the name because Veronica, Saint Veronica, she may or may not have actually existed. She isn't mentioned in the Bible and is only known by tradition. And what a tradition. She was said to have been on the road to the crucifixion and is immortalized in the 6th station of the cross as the woman who wiped the face of Christ in an act of ultimate compassion, taking an imprint of his face, an actual portrait of Christ. This is considered a fact in Catholicism, but not necessarily the scientific kind. It's a matter of faith and inspiration. It is, as they say, a great mystery. She's also a subject of one of those material relic paradoxes I love so well. I want to introduce you to another word, and that is, if I can pronounce it, acheiropoietic. This is, of course, from the Greek, so acheiropoietica. This is an image which falls from heaven in a way, not made by human hands. To quote Latour again, as is well known from art historians and theologians, many sacred icons that have been celebrated and worshipped are called acheiropoietic. That is, not made by any human hand. Faces of Christ, portraits of the Virgin, Veronica's veil. There are many instances of these icons that have fallen from heaven without any intermediary. To show that a humble human painter has made them would be to weaken their force, to sully their origin, to desecrate them. That's from his his Iconoclash article as well. So, what we have here is the showing of the Veronica's veil, which happens every year in St. Peter's on the 5th Sunday of Lent, which means it's coming up if you're interested. The other is a painting, an artist's rendition of St. Veronica holding up her handiwork. And so it's kind of, in a way, to me this is a very interesting situation of a painter's reality, showing a person who probably was not one person or was not a real person, but is creating some sort of believability about it that other people can take part in. But at the top of the Scala Sancta is the Sancta Sanctorum, the holiest of holy places, and it's a chapel that houses something they call the Euronica, which is that head at the top there, which is the icon of Christ Pantocrator. That was supposedly begun by St. Luke and finished as an acheiropoieta, meaning it was finished by an angel, so St. Luke started it and an angel finished it. And that's cool. But then you have also the Shroud of Turin, another image. No one knows how it was made, but you can believe it was made when Christ resurrected from the dead. The cloth laid across his body became irradiated, and an image of his face and body burned into a cloth. This image has actually been so influential that most paintings of Christ have characteristics of this shadowy outline. And in Abruzzo, you have the monopello, which is a competing image for the same events, either covering Christ's face at his death or resurrection, or being Veronica's veil, though I find that one less convincing. These relics of the Holy Face cannot be proven with any scientific certainty, yet their theological impact has endured for centuries, and you'll find probably millions of people who think they're real. Okay, now that I've set that up, we can get past it. Because I think there's an irony to the fact that in Christianity, idols are forbidden because they are the work of human hands and therefore cannot be true. But an image which defies explanation entirely can be somehow more absolutely proof of something totally illogical yet miraculous. Belief abounds with images which defy explanation in how they are made or where they come from. And I know the temptation is to try and think of AI-generated images as this kind of thing as well. The image appears out of nowhere, not made by human hands, but don't forget, the computer is made by human hands for sure. And the code is also. So, our ideas cannot be miracles, and God is not mocked. don't give the machines too much credit. Nonetheless, we've gotten ourselves into a rather broken image culture. I find remembering what images have been, that we have not always had access to computers, optics, photography, video, refreshing. That I have not always felt awash in an endless scroll makes me hopeful that some middle ground can be found between what digital abundance provides and what portable, true, untrue objects represent. In my career, I would not dare to say I have ever made anything true, but I have broken quite a few rigid distinctions of how media is popularly seen. In fact, I kind of made a habit out of it, for better or worse. So now we're just going to do a little quick journey through some work. I've always made digital art, so there. The fact is that when I studied fine art in school, everything was very manual and there was no such thing as digital art. We made it up, or at least we thought we did, because of course there was digital art, we just didn't know what it was. There was no one to teach us about it. There was no teacher who would have taught through this in 1990 through 94. This was not going to happen. My first job at that computer lab at Parsons School of Design in New York, I took my own photographs and I scanned in the negatives and I manipulated them in Photoshop versions 1, 2, 3, whatever. I had to output them to film, and then I contacted them in gelatin silver prints, meaning it was just black and white, darkroom stuff. Digital, yet still physical. And I have embellished them. These are just, I have 3 examples left from that period of time and nothing else exists anymore from them. In 1995, around, I got online and immediately sat with the glorious possibility of taking my practice 100% virtual. But I felt the pain of loss of materiality for years. Of course, the virtuality was appealing because I had absolutely no money, and it felt like I could have a studio and an audience and like everything I ever wanted if I just took everything online and wasn't so obsessed with making physical work anymore. It was something new and something that would change the world for me and for everyone, and all the propaganda of the day supported that claim. I'm 24 years old here with nothing to lose. The web was the first thing I ever truly believed in. It was a path to freedom from my awful 4th floor walk-up, dismal apartment on the Lower East Side. And for a while, it was perfect. I was able to be whoever I wanted to be. I pretended to be a professional designer, and boom, suddenly I was. True story. I just had to convince everyone that this could be a place for art. I met my husband online, we fell in love in a chat room. I moved to Belgium, we made countless, literally hundreds of websites together. We just had to convince everyone that the web was a place to show our humanity. In all its messy glory, art and fantasy combined, love in the wires, a mash of metaphors, a blender into which put sound, image, motion, and flesh on operatic display for all to see. But after a few years, when Google and Facebook, etc. began the Web 2.0 era, we could see that the Web 1.0 ways that we loved were dead. It was a blip. The worldwide net art scene that we were involved in fell away and turned to corporate data visualization, blogs, design standards. Art institutional interest in what had been going on was there, but then quickly shriveled, the bubble burst, and that was a pain that took years for me to heal. I still maybe haven't. We escaped. We ran into video games. Started thinking not only about why we started making anything virtual, but with what set of ideas. We drew right away a distinction between games and video games. Games are ancient. Video games, by comparison, were brand new, and felt like a wide open field. In the beginning, we were playing video games like Quake's the arena, multiplayer, in other words, and wondering why things were the way they were. We designed ourselves avatars where we were naked and walked around like Adam and Eve, and we didn't have guns, we put the guns under the floor. So, anyway, pacifist in a way. In the beginning, we saw it as a medium unto itself, so it was perplexing to us why there were so many limitations on form, why there were only certain genres of game, and we felt like we needed to break that in order to build. We tried making one last paradise out of the web. Again, Adam and Eve appeared, this project, Eden.garden from 2001, where every HTML tag formed an element in a vast, explorable 3D open world that was available in a browser, and I think we were probably one of the first people to really do that, like, because it was completely, it wasn't, I don't know, it was very real time, it was very much generated world, so I had never seen that at that time. Only in video games, but not in a web browser. We got serious, we started a company. The independent video game dream, if you were an independent developer, was that the individual artists or small companies could make and sell video games directly to players, cutting out the middleman. Not only that, but you can make video games about anything, not just shooters or conventional point-and-click games. We started calling them experiences, vignettes, walking simulators. Games are an image you enter that responds, that requires your belief and participation to function. You draw a magic circle, and within that border, anything is real, and your behavior adjusts to that new reality. Video games could be what we call mythopoetic, and mythopoetic isn't new. It's what you return to once you stop pretending that images are facts. An image takes on emphasis and exaggeration. It can be more beautiful, more about those vast, distant mountains than the small person in the foreground in their little world. Though, you could jump in and visit him too. Games are participatory in a way that is emergent, each person experiencing their own reality behind the screen, but linking up, creating communities of people sharing an experience, each plays their part. We just had to convince everyone that this is a video game. We started, again, like I said, we started calling them all kinds of things. We sort of accidentally pioneered the genre of the walking simulator. We kind of, created a big to-do about things. As Tale of Tales, we made video games, we made 8 video games over the years, and they're still available today. While there are still many so-called independent developers, the indie game dev dream died for many reasons, but that's a whole other talk. But 2 stick in my mind, and the first one would be Steam, the platform where most games are bought and sold. Steam, the rise of Steam stole independent sales from us as a people. They're the reason why you can't sell your game from your website and make a lot of money anymore. And the other thing that killed indie game dev, as I knew it, was Gamergate. Please Google that, because that's a whole other talk, but Gamergate started as a small-time harassment thing, but ballooned into a political firestorm, which, believe it or not, you are still dealing with today, my beloved brothers and sisters. And that's all I'll say about that, but yeah. When I started making video games, it was strange to be a woman making games. It was even stranger to make games which had female characters. You're just gonna have to trust me on that. It's like I can't even tell you about 2008, 2009, and this levels of stratification between what you could and could not do as a woman. This game, The Path, I designed 6 girls, and they were characters you couldn't control. You had to let them go and let them do what they needed to do in order to progress. Nowadays, all games, or nearly all, are controlled via the keys W, A, S, D, and a mouse for looking around. Boring! We proposed at the time that a large part of video game aesthetics were the ways you controlled or did not control the game itself. That embodiment and personification needed to be diversified if the medium were ever to be taken seriously. It didn't, and it's not. Some said we were destroying video games then. We were infamous. See our 2006 Real-Time Art Manifesto for more statements considered outrageous desecrations of video games in the arts. But, all that said, and I get emotional because so much, so much work I've done, and it's always felt like I was working against something. I propose that AI is the WASDification of the image. The burning down of the image to its base, removing it of its utility, even to be ornament. Do not devalue what it means to be human. AI cannot be us. Making something original is the easiest thing in the world. Just make what comes out of you and it won't be like anything else anybody made. AI and indeed computers can only make copy after copy. Even when we try to copy ourselves, as I did here, different versions of the same thing, we find another path, a new depth, something within us to believe in. Okay, and time passes and I decided not to make games anymore. I decide I can only bear to hang on to two things, 3D and web, such as it is. I could never really escape my first love. I decided I would make sculpture, but I still felt and still feel, and even things like these are sculptures. So see, I did it again. Oops. Do I keep making digital art because I believe in it or because I want to break it? I wanted to go back to sculpture really and truly. During the pandemic times, I stumbled upon a gallery that found my work with 3D printing fascinating, so I wanted to just make regular, static sculpture practice my thing. I swore I would never ride a wave again, that I would not be an innovator or early adopter or anything, but no. My first sculpture was a matter of freeing this here character from a digital world. I used a 3D printer, but I also gave her digital versions which could travel as augmented reality sculptures around the world via the web. During my first gallery exhibitions, this was very useful because of the pandemic and everything. A real, unreal, virtual, physical thing made perfect sense in that moment. And then suddenly a guy sells a JPEG for $60 million and NFTs are a thing. Because of my history with new media and newfound proximity with the art world, I was galled into being involved. If only to give a cautionary tale about these kinds of group delusions. NFTs, crypto, is perhaps the best example of a relic-like belief in something totally unreal. A groupthink decision on the monetary value of a totally replicable digital file. But I just needed to convince them that this is sculpture. There are good things about NFTs. There is a possibility of independence, again, waved under artists' noses. The chance to get paid instantly, getting paid royalties when artworks are resold, the traceability back to the place of origin, never getting cheated out of money again, except none of those things is expressly true. Crypto is volatile and dangerous to hold on to, and the whole tax liability thing is a nightmare. Beyond that, if not done carefully, your work gets reduced to a token commodity and never seen again, lost in the stream. All right, so that's mostly over, and currently my work is completely about replication and translation of certain forms, metamorphosizing them from digital to physical and back again, taking the digital materiality just as seriously as the precious materiality of the sculpture. When dealing between polygons and bronze, which stands the test of time? That's my favorite question. Of course, I'm team data. I want data to win. But, you know, bronze, they always say that's the eternal one. Although, find an ancient Greek bronze, why don't you? Today, I break screens to show the ruins of that are left of our image wars. I'm trying to here break my own sculpture and break through what any of that sculpture meant. Why spend all this time working in media that doesn't last, that you had to be there to understand, because the ground you work on is shifting sand. In this room is a sculpture called Prophecy. I was literally wondering how to kill my own idols, breaking a digital sculpture and building a gate with it where you could confront the decay of our ultra-contemporary world. The AI rush I dealt with by coding this app called idle.app with Claude Code. I had to compile every instance in the Bible where it started with "Thus says the Lord," and entries from the Sibylline oracles to create distracting shapes and animations from it, illustrating that we are entertaining ourselves at the expense of truth. I had quite an experience working with AI every day. I did enjoy having a JavaScript coding slave, I'm not gonna lie. But it led to unruly, unpredictable, hallucinated results most of the time, such as when he randomly decided to delete code for no reason at all. It always says, your unified system should work perfectly now. it's like, yeah, great, you know, and then it's like, no, it doesn't work at all, you know, and it's like, you're absolutely right. I broke it, you know, it's like, yeah, well, why did you break, anyway, yeah, so that was my life for a while. He randomly decided to delete code for a reason that I also had to watch him. I decided I'm not so interested in this. In other words, I push the brakes here. Not that I refuse to use AI, but I am very selective about how I use it, and I'm not co-signing nothing, basta. There's nothing on this slide. And there's nothing on this one either. Friends. Friends. Somewhere along the line we forgot. Images are not facts. Images are participatory evidence of culture. I've spent 30 years making obviously fabricated images and obviously artificial environments, and I thought I was working against the dominant culture, but it's caught up to me. I was probably remembering something older, that images don't work by being unmediated, they work by being worthy mediators. And what we have now is a lot of unworthy mediators running around. Thinking about medieval icons or pre-photographic ways of seeing doesn't always help us, does it? We're stuck in a moment of permanent conceptual iconoclash where images are unstable things. However, there are unique ways of being in this image stream that I'll always be nostalgic for, the ways we are together. I hear you. Internet memes have some highlights. If you want to talk about an image war, how about my favorite, the dress? Which, yes, you had to be there and then, but it was a big religious matter about what color this dress was. FYI, I am team white and gold. Whenever this image is talked about, arguments still break out in the comments section, though it was empirically proven that it was blue and black, team white and gold forever. Such a moment might be all that's left of this idea of net art. Net art was never meant to be serious. It wasn't meant to be in institutions. Net art was about what we did to get to each other. Where the art happened was in the middle. So yeah, I consider this to be a very big artistic moment for the internet, actually. On a darker note of the image wars, I will always harken back to the first time I really saw 3D used as a tool meant to represent something true that was obviously a lie. This is from the famous slide presentation given by U.S. General Colin Powell in the run-up to justify the Iraq War in 2003, which led to the Afghanistan War, which led to blah, 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 and on and on. A total fabrication at worst and speculation at best about how they had chemical weapons on board trucks that were mobile, and that's why they couldn't be found when inspectors went to look for them. But at the time, it was presented as 100% fact. I remember it extremely clearly that this image was presented as some kind of proof. If anything, a reminder that photographs have only been associated as arbiters of veracity of the facts since what? The 1900s, early 1900s. And since the 2000s, we have been gradually breaking that down, getting further and further away from the image and the truth. So I ask you, what is an image? We're confronted now with these image delusions, images that are conjured every day now, AI slop everywhere. There's no way to be sure what's real, so maybe that's good. Let's get past it. For years, photographs were seen as absolute facts of time and place, even with media theory and the notion that a photo must be seen through the subjective experience of the person who made it. People want to believe in the truth of the photographic image. I'm sure that that desire and its clash with reality, unreality, that will be the subject of much in our culture for the foreseeable future. Every image an iconoclash. I had to live with the idea of the ephemeral object to the point where my first 10 years of production had nearly completely disappeared. I had to live with the vagaries of a market that didn't value artistic output of game developers and all but used the wave of creativity to make money for huge software companies and publishers on the back of young, talented people, and then throw them under a bus when the winds of politics changed direction. I had to laugh, to be honest, when crypto crashed and when the permanent blockchain and IPFS storage proved once again that the cloud is just someone else's computer. And now I live in the stream. The stream is home. So when I find myself down a rabbit hole asking an AI for a historic link between the Egyptian Wadjet eye, the 100-eyed Argus of Greek myth, biblically accurate angels, the 9 eyes of Google Maps cars, and a one-eyed Cyclops, I have to admit, what the AI can never see is the truth. The only thing any of these things have in common is me.